Hi, I'm Eric Swartz, WA6HHQ, co-founder of Elecraft with Wayne Burdick and 6KR. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to be talking about the latest features we've added to the K4 over the recent months. But before that, I'd like to show you a short tour of the factory at Elecraft where we're building and testing your K4s. Elecraft is located in Watsonville, California, just outside of Silicon Valley on the Monterey Bay. We've been designing and manufacturing radios and other ham radio equipment for over 22 years now. We support our community by hiring employees locally, and I'm proud to say we have an excellent team here at Elecraft. Our on-site team includes those in manufacturing assembly, sales, customer support, administration, test technicians, and shipping. All of us here at Elecraft are excited about our latest radio, the K4 High Performance Direct Sampling SDR. We've been working hard to ramp up K4 production over the past months, and our team of assemblers are working hard building K4s and matching equipment such as the KPA 1500, our solid-state 1500 watt amplifier, the SP4 matching speaker for the K4, which can also be used with almost any other radio, and our K-Pod external VFO control panel. Our test team is putting every K4 through rigorous testing and burn-in to ensure that your K4 is delivered to you ready to operate in the most extreme environments. If you haven't received it already, we're looking forward to shipping you your K4 soon. I'm going to go over a few general features of the K4 first for those of you maybe that haven't been in my presentations before, and then I'll go into some more detail on the newer features that we've added in the last 6 months. For those of you that haven't seen our presentations before, we've also got them on our YouTube channel for Elecraft, so you can see really in much more detail the basic features on the radio and get a feel for that. Also, after this talk, we'll be giving a live Q&A. You'll be able to go to that and transition to it to ask questions for us, and I'll be doing a live Q&A probably from my actual test lab and be able to demo stuff in real time if people want to see things. So hopefully we can have some fun there too. Overall, the K4 is a 160 through 6 meter high-performance direct sampling SDR. And what that means is that we're directly sampling the RF at the analog to digital converter in the radio at a much higher frequency, about 122.8 megahertz. But we can basically see the whole RF spectrum if we want to. We tend to filter it down in the front end to just the ham bands in question where you're tuning, or just outside the bands for the shortwave coverage. So in addition, the K4 is a all-mode and 100-watt radio all the way through 166 meters, as I mentioned. We basically can cover in the radio AM, single sideband, FM. We also can transmit and decode PSK31, RTTY. Of course, we also have direct audio input to an internal sound card, actually, or through external line-in, line-out cards for things like PSK31, or excuse me, for external programs that do PSK31, or other digital modes like FT8, FT4, etc. Those all can go directly to our internal sound card, which is a high-performance sound card on the radio. All of our K4s actually have two receivers. So the K4, the basic K4, has one analog to digital converter, but it can receive two frequencies at once and the same antenna. So you basically can tune two places at once in the band, listen to the pileup in addition to the frequency you're on, or just listen to two places in the band at once if you want. And of course, watch on the pan adapters at the same time in different areas of the band if you want to. K4D has two analog to digital converters in it, which supports two separate receive antennas for two completely independent channels of both receive and also pan adapter display. So you can be on different antennas with that information coming in, or share the same antenna if you want, but you get a lot more flexibility there. One key thing you get is also what we call diversity reception on the K4D, where you can listen to two different antennas, say a wire antenna at a low altitude, another one at a high altitude, or different orientations, or a whole range of combination of antennas that allows you to listen to both those antennas, one in each ear on the same frequency, and say when the bands are changing and one signal is fading out on one antenna, it typically hasn't faded out in the other and vice versa. You actually get a better ability to maintain communications in marginal situations with that. And it's become quite popular with our radios. Two other key features in the radio. One is because we're direct sampling and doing all the demodulation and key filtering in the DSP with really idealized filters, we can control the audio quality throughout the whole system. And so the receive and transmit quality on the radio is outstanding. And it's been getting great feedback from the customers we've shipped to out there. I'm sure you've heard it in the air. And it lowers the fatigue factor when you're on receive. And when we do the Q&A session afterwards in particular, we probably can do some demonstration of that for people to give you a feel for what it's like. We also have a high-res built-in LCD color touchscreen that allows you basically to operate the radio either both through touch or just through the knobs. But in addition to that, we support an external LCD or any external monitor, HDMI monitor, that we have up to 1920 by 1080 here on this flat screen LCD I have hooked up to it right now. But also you could support up to 4K monitors and most 4K monitors out there. I haven't tested all of them, but most of them should work for you. But the key thing, even 1920 by 1080 is more than sufficient for most stuff that we see on this. One neat thing I haven't mentioned before is that we're also testing with some of the external HDMI touchscreens. So we've tested several external, just regular monitors that have touchscreen support, and it just looks like a mouse to us when you're touching the touchscreen. So it works perfectly. So that'll be really cool when we get that in place also. One cool thing we can do with this external screen is go either in mirror mode that I'm in right now, where I'm mirroring this on a much larger screen, or actually have it be just the pan adapters, which is a neat feature. I'll show you how that works right now, just to give you a feel. So if I go into menu and under external monitor function, I instead of saying mirror LCD, which we're doing now, I can change it to pan adapter only and give it a second to switch here. And now we're in an external pan adapter mode. You see you have a lot more pan adapter real estate. And right now I have both VFOs showing here, both down on 40 meters and on 20 meters. But I can also go in here and switch the display so that I'm just showing, say, 20 meters, for instance. If I go over here and say for external monitor, all I want to do is show, that's pan B, pan A, that's split, excuse me. There's pan A there. So I can actually do both at the same time. One other key feature of the K4 and the K4D is our optional internal auto tuner. Like our other radios, it actually can tune up to a wide range, up to a 10-to-1 SWR on 80 through 10, and about 5-to-1 SWR on 160 and 6, with memories per frequency, per band, and antenna to keep track of your tuning solutions. So once you've tuned to your antenna, it's transparent when it just clicks and when you change frequency. One other cool thing about that, though, on the K4 is we also added the ability to, when you have that in the system, it's got an advanced receive switching matrix that lets you select for each receiver from those 3 antenna selection ports and the transmit receive ports in the back of the radio. You usually have just one port without the auto tuner. So you can do those, but also the receivers can independently be selected to those and to 2 of the receive inputs on the back of the radio for 5 total inputs. So that gives you a very flexible receive situation. You can select that from the front of the radio, as I've demonstrated in other demos for the radio, and you get a feel for how quickly and you can switch antennas back and forth between those. One other really key feature in the radio is our I/O on the radio, which is very flexible. We've got a USB connector on the back, which gives you 2 virtual USB COM ports going to an external computer. Also an internal USB sound card with line in, line out, with the 2 receivers, like one on left and one on right, coming out that. All adjustable from the menu on the front panel in terms of line levels and things like that. So what's neat is those 2 COM ports that are on that, plus an additional 9-pin port, typical RS-232, physical one, sort of a legacy port that can go to step-IR antennas or other peripherals that want to have that serial control. All those ports support the same control and response command set from the radio. So you can set radio modes, frequencies, get that information back out, so on, through any of those ports independently. While one's talking to one program, the other port doesn't see that. So each port is independent. You can have a lot of independent functions going on at once. In addition, our Ethernet port in the back, in addition to doing software downloads and updates to the radio, also supports that full command set. And what's nice about that is it's not just one device that can talk to it at a time. If it's being talked to from different computers or different IP locations, it opens up a separate virtual session for each one of those. Again, they don't see each other. So you could actually have 2 different JTDX programs running or some other things at the same time to get a feel for what you can do. You could actually have more than that, up to some reasonable limitation on that. But you can basically have multiple programs talking to us through all these different ports at the same time, without colliding with each other. Obviously, they both try to set the frequency. The last one's going to win, but they're not going to mess up each other by one seeing the response to the other program. So that's very powerful. So Ethernet, multiple COM ports on the USB port, and also the legacy COM port. Of course, one of the most important features of the K4 is that we're modular and upgradable. And what that means is, of course, you can upgrade from a K4 with a single A/D converter, single antenna input for receive, and transmit, of course, or multiple transmit antennas, but one antenna at a time, to a K4D, which adds a second A/D converter, that complete receive chain, complete second set of bandpass filters. So you can upgrade even if you buy a K4 into a K4D. We are now testing in the lab, finishing up on the K4HD, the high HD option basically gives you an expanded blocking dynamic range with a superhet front end that you can switch in and out in real time on the radio. Again, that's just going to be a card set that you add to the radio to expand it. But on top of that, we're not just locked into the current technology, say for A to D converters or other key parts in the radio. In particular, in the A to Ds, if they come out with better ones in the future, our analog to digital converters are on what we call a little digital down converter card that has an analog digital converter, a microprocessor, and a field programmable gate array that actually handles a lot of the high-speed processing before that data stream is sent off to the digital signal processor. So if there's a new, say 5, 6, 10 years down the road, version of analog to digital converter even gets us more performance out there, we can come out with new cards that you can upgrade with there and get the radio even to a higher level of performance. Next, we're going to go into the new features we've added to the K4 over the last 6 months. I'll give you a quick feel for each feature and then jump on to the next one so we can get through these fairly quickly. And then when we finish these, we'll go probably finish up the talk and then go into the Q&A session afterwards. The next feature I'm going to talk about is dynamic range optimization. And this is an option where you can turn on and off while you're listening to, say, a regular signal on frequency when you're getting some interference from very strong stations, say a couple of them nearby off frequency that are creating some intermodulation distortion on your frequency. What you can do is literally turn that on and off in real time and see if it improves your reception of the signal you're listening to. In our case, we give it the ability to make that a function key on the radio or go into a menu if you want, but I usually give it on a function key. But I'll show you how we do it right now. So let me go into the main menu and show you where it's located. So if you go into menu, under the RX section, you'll see dynamic range optimization. I've got it off right now, and of course you can unlock it and turn it on. And of course, this is not something you would do in real time, and it's fairly simple. The main effect that you'll see there is, in most cases, nothing, because most cases you don't have strong enough signals to cause that kind of problem in a receiver. So what dynamic range optimization does is it gives you the ability of reducing even more so the small amounts of distortion that any analog and digital converter have. By turning it on, it basically will give you the opportunity to see if you have strong signals nearby causing interference on your frequency, not from splatter, but basically from overload of any receiver. Analog to digital converter chip. This basically improves the dynamic range on that chip quite a bit. So you can turn on and off as you need. You don't have to have it on all the time, but it's a wonderful feature to have in those really rare cases, usually on a quieter band where you might want to use this. When I say quieter band, 2 strong guys nearby without 11 other people on the band. That's where it's most useful. The next feature we've added is the ability to display the spectrum amplitude both in dB as we've started on the first versions of the radio and also in S units. And it's very simple to change this. In order to do that, all you do is go into the menu. Right now I'm showing S units up here. You can see these signals are hitting S2, S4, S6, and so on. If I hit menu and I go to spectrum amplitude units, and literally I can change from S units. If I want to go to dBm, hit return. And now we're seeing it minus 120, minus 110, minus 190, so on. So you can choose what you prefer on here. One thing to remember when you're looking at the spectrum, by the way, versus the S meter, is we have the ability to do signal averaging. That's one of the options in the menu here. If you go into display, and you'll see over here with looking for signal averaging right here. I have average of 3, so it takes 3 passes before you actually build up each sweep. And that tends to average out noise, but also short peaks may not show up as high on the spectrum display. You may see it higher on the S meter when you have averaging turned on, and on the spectral display it might read a little bit lower, but it also reduces the noise around weak signals so you can see them on the display more easily. But in essence, though, you're getting an average dBm or S meter reading. If you want to turn off the averaging, you can see it'll correlate almost exactly with the S meter. One new feature we've added to the K4 is the ability to slave the noise blanker on and off on the pan adapter for the pan adapter display to the noise blanker on the main receiver. Normally they're independent, but you can also put it in auto mode where when you turn on and off the noise blanker for the receiver, the main pan adapter noise blanker turns on and off too. Let me show you how that works. So if I go over into the display option which handles all the pan adapters set up, and I hit noise blanker, right now you see the noise blanker is on. You'll see the little icon up here on the big screen. Noise blanker is on. I can just turn it manually on and off here, and there it goes. But it's not following the noise blanker on the main receiver, which I can turn on and off separately. You can see that up there for the main receiver. They're not slaved. If you want to slave it, you just keep tapping this here until it says auto. You leave it in that mode, and I can have it set for either the VFO and so on. And now, when I turn the noise blanker on and off for the main receiver, you'll see noise blanker on and off for both. So very handy. So in those cases where you find that's what you're using for most case, you can switch them both at the same time. Another new feature we've added to the K4 is the ability to add an additional third preamplifier selection on higher bands for the radio for 12, 10, and 6 meters, you now have a preamplifier 3 position. And I'll show you how to turn that on. It's default turned off on the radio, but in the menu you can turn it on, and then you can rotate through all 3 on those upper bands. So it's quite simple to turn on. Right now I have it set. I think I just have it, actually maybe left it on. I have 1, 2, 3. I'm up on 50 megahertz right now. You can see that going through here. And I can go into here, though, if I didn't need that, and go into the menu and say, I don't want that. Disabled. Right there, return. And now, when you do it, you're just going to see preamp 1, preamp 2 on the upper bands. So depending on your needs, if you don't want to rotate through 3 preamps, you don't have to do that. But the advantage you've got with this is on the upper bands, especially say on 6 meters, that gets you up to like the minus 140 or better dBm sensitivity for MDS. So it's a big advantage to be able to kick that in there when you need it. Another neat feature that we've added to the K4 is a built-in macro editor. We've got function keys on the K4 that you can then define to do specific functions you want, either single functions to turn it on and off, so on, or multiple functions in sequence. Say you're operating split on 20 meters and you want to set the radio go to split transmit up to, say on CW. You can make that a single function key on the radio, either a hard function key over on the radio here, or also function keys in our function key menu on the screen. So I'll show you how you can edit those with the macro editor, and it's fairly straightforward. I'm not going to actually create some macros, but I'll show you how you go into it and the keyboard that pops up, things like that. So to edit, you just literally hit a function key menu button here. It brings up all of our function keys and also dedicated keys like software update. And you basically here hold on the macro button. And now this shows all the macros you've defined on the radio. And I can scroll through these with the VFO key and see some are mapped, some are not used. That one's not used. And say I want to create, and you can see by looking above here, you can see I've got multiple functions here for dynamic range optimization, turn it on and turn it off. You notice we've got, if you go back here to function, I actually have those keys defined here. So going back to when I was talking about DR optimization, you don't have to go into the menu to turn it on and off. I define it to some keys here, but just as easily you could make it a key here, just turn it on and off, and toggle that back and forth. So going back into the macro editor here, I basically have an unused macro here. So if I tap on that guy, it's going to bring up the macro editor. And this is that for function 2 button on here. And then I could put in just literally typing in the string you want. And in our manual for the radio, we've actually got a whole section that shows what the macros are defined for. So you can go through and say, oh, I want to turn on and off noise blanker, or I want to do preamp plus noise blanker, or some combination of keys even. You can do that here, just separated by semicolons. So that information's in the manual. We're continually updating that to make it more powerful and more clear on how to use also. One thing I didn't mention when I was just discussing the macro editor is we've also now got context-sensitive keyboards that pop up on the screen when you want to do different functions like this. The one for the macro editor has specific keys oriented, so it's quick and easy and to find everything you need to enter macros. Whereas when you're in CW, say we can decode on the screen, which I can show in the demo session later, and also transmit on the screen with a keyboard hooked up to the radio for, say, PSK31, CW, or RTTY. And certainly there's certain things on the keyboard you want different for those, so it's unique for that. So each unique situation, we're now bringing up unique keyboards for that tie to that. So context-sensitive keyboard switching, you'll see that continually expanded as we add features to the radio that might want to use an internal keyboard. Another new feature on the K4 for external transverter users is we now have the ability to display correctly on the display on the radio up to 99 gigahertz on the radio on the digital displays. And in addition, we can support a transverter on one band, say on a K4D, and on one display side, say on VFO-B, and on VFO-A, or vice versa, HF band on that. So you can have split between HF and transverter on the 2 VFOs. So very handy for monitoring 2 places at once when you're using transverters. Another much requested feature that we've been asked for is the ability to adjust our transmit bandwidth. And what we have is 2 modes of operation in the radio. We have regular SSB up through about a 3 kilohertz bandwidth, and then ESSB, I think currently up through about 4.5 kilohertz of transmit bandwidth. And they're very simple to set up. They're independent, so you can store 2 separate bandwidths and switch back and forth between those on transmit if you need to use that. It's maybe some data modes, for instance, that might need that in the future too. So we've got that basic capability built in now. Let me show you how to do that now. So if you go into our TX menu here, and you look at the right-hand side, I've got ESSB turned off right now, and I have the regular SSB bandwidth set to 2.8 kilohertz. If I tap that, I can then, using the VFO or the plus-minus keys, adjust that over a wide range of 2.4 to 3, basically, of sideband transmit bandwidths. I'll leave it up right around 2.7, typically 2.8. But if I go over here to ESSB and turn ESSB on, now I can adjust the ESSB bandwidth also. I've also turned on the ESSB at that point. So if you don't want it, you want to go back to that, you just tap it again to turn it off. So here, I have it set to 4, but I can go all the way up to 4.5 kilohertz. I think the minimum is right around 3, just above the regular sideband. But see, if I have that set to 4.5, when I turn it off, it goes back to the 2.8 for sideband. So you've got 2 independently adjusted transmit bandwidths that you can independently set and make use of the wider ones when you need them. Last 2 features in the radio are really both features that are existing, but we've expanded over time. First of all, the built-in manual for the radio. I can just bring that up by hitting the question mark in the lower left-hand side here. That now, of course, is expanded generally almost with every software release. It might be every other, but we've got a lot more information in there. That's also available on the web, as is the regular intro manual you can get for the radio. So you've got it there, but you've also got it with you all the time. And whenever you've done a software update, you know you have at least the latest manual we released at that point. So that's really handy. And we've got a lot of key features that we've been adding to the radio all documented in there, and also expanding information on how to use the radio. One key thing with that is you can bring it up here as I've done. I literally just hit the question mark. If you hit this little expand button, it gives it to you full screen. This is something you can scroll through literally with your finger, or if you want to use this guy, the AV thing. If I want to read about VFOs and right side controls, it'll do them here. You can also hit a control and then hit the question mark, and it'll tell you about what that control is about. So we continue to expand that every time, add new stuff to it, and basically have a complete manual built into the radio. Last feature I'm going to cover is one that's been on the radio for a little while, but actually hasn't been talked about much, and we continue to keep it updated with the latest information, is the prefix menu. And if you go in here and just in the function key menu, go over to the right where it says DX list, we have a whole list of prefixes. So I can go through and say, there's a whole EA9 or EA to EH is Spain and so on. But say I'm looking up a new prefix that I've heard, I can hit the search button here and type in, say, CY9. Hit enter. So there's St. Paul Island. You can see where it is right away. So for newer hams or hams that are more casual DXers, this is a really useful tool. So this is fun when we put in the radio. It's just like the manual. It's updated every time you update the software if we've added new stuff to it. Thank you for coming to this talk. Now, if you want, come to our Q&A session where we'll do live question and answer session and also demo of the radio. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks a lot.